Today will be humid with considerable cloudiness and a high of 24. Right now it's 23 degrees. As Texas reels from catastrophic flooding, questions are rising north of the border about how prepared Canadian cities are for the next big storm. XFM reporter Theodore Ramarak has the full story.
As flooding devastates parts of Texas this week, University of Waterloo's head of Intact's Center on Climate Adaptation, Blair Feltmate, is warning that Canada may not be far behind, especially with most flood risk maps across the country being out of date.
Most Canadian cities, not all, but most, flood risk maps tend to be about 20 to 25 years out of date. In other words, when large precipitation events occur, what we don't have is a good delineation on where water is going to go, particularly in urban or suburban areas.
That lack of up-to-date planning could leave communities vulnerable as climate change drives bigger and more frequent storms. And while Ontario has conservation authorities that control where buildings can and can't happen, the rest of the country isn't as strict.
9 other provinces, they have no conservation authorities, so they leave discretion as to where you can and cannot build relative to floodplains. They leave that up to the municipalities. And if you have a municipality with a mayor and councillors and so forth who may not even believe that climate change is real, very often they can end up allowing building to occur in areas that are prone to flooding.
Feltmate says unless flood mapping and building policies catch up, Canadians could be just as exposed as their neighbors to the south. Theodore Ramarak, XFM News.
OPP are looking for a repeat offender known to visit London, Sarnia, and Toronto. Joshua Gray is 44 years and is wanted on Canada-wide warrant for breach of his statutory release. He is described as being 5'10" tall, with brown hair and green eyes and several tattoos. He is currently serving a 6-year and 9-month sentence, and his offenses are armed robbery, possess of substance for purpose of trafficking, and disguise with intent. Anyone having contact with information is asked to contact Crime Stoppers or call 911. U.S. President Donald Trump says he'll be sending letters to countries around the world today as he seeks trade deals, but Canada isn't being affected by Wednesday's tariffs deadline. Kelly Malone has the story.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he's sending correspondents to up to 15 countries hit by his Liberation Day duties, telling them he'll impose a tariff rate if there's no trade deal. Members of Trump's administration have said those tariffs would go into effect in August. Trump took his trade war to the world in April, but walked back the most devastating duties a few hours later, setting that 90-day deadline. Since then, only 2 trade arrangements have materialized. Canada wasn't included in those global tariffs and is committed to coming up with some sort of bilateral deal with the U.S. by July 21st. Kelly Malone, The Canadian Press, Washington.
Mondelez Canada says it's no longer producing Jersey milk chocolate bars. Michelle Zanikin from The Canadian Press has more.
The company's decision to cut the product came after a portfolio review showed consumers have shifted to buying other pure milk chocolate bars like Cadbury Dairy Milk. Jersey Milk was only produced in Canada, and the company says the end of its production will not result in any job cuts. A series of acquisitions left the chocolate bar under the purview of Mondelez International, which has a downtown Toronto Cadbury chocolate factory employing nearly 400 workers. Michelle Zadikian, The Canadian Press, Toronto.
In sports, in the MLB, the Toronto Blue Jays will play against the Chicago White Sox today at 7:40 p.m. Both teams will also face tomorrow at the same time. The Detroit Tigers will also play today versus the Tampa Bay Rays at 6:40 p.m. Both teams will also face tomorrow at the same time. In the CFL, the Edmonton Elks won their first game of the season with a 39-33 over the visiting Ottawa Redblacks. And the Hamilton Cardinals hammered the London Majors 15-2 on Sunday in inter-county league baseball action. In the Cup World Cup, Fluminense is facing Chelsea for the semifinals of the tournament at 3 p.m. Your XFM traffic. Emergency services are on the scene of a serious collision in the area of Fanshawe Park Road and Clark Road. The intersection is closed in all directions. Wellington Street is fully closed between King and Horton, including the underpass for construction. If you have a traffic or news tip, call 519-455-NEWS. That's 455-6397.
And your Environment Canada forecast. Today is not as warm, but humid with considerable cloudiness. Tomorrow we'll have a mix of sun and clouds and a high of 27. And on Wednesday will be mostly cloudy and rainy. Right now it's 23 degrees. Find more news online anytime at 1069thx.com.